That are here to let you know, Madeline Fournier will be handling questions. We'll be getting to audience questions after, so you can feel free to submit your questions either through the chat or the Q&A feature. We'll try to get as many as we can, but we'll be stopping the questions about, well, 4:20 will be as long as we can go for questions. So we'll do our best. All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending Just Recovery Simcoe's all candidate meeting for Simcoe North. My name is Margaret Prophet. I'm with the Simcoe County Greenbelt Coalition. For this debate, we have been happy to have several community groups endorsing, including my coalition, as well as Simcoe County Alliance to End Homelessness, Aware Simcoe, Couchiching Jubilee House, Simcoe County Environmental Youth Alliance, Green Orillia, Stop Sprawl Orillia, Lakehead University Students Union, Sustainable Orillia, FATSA, Concerned Citizens of Romera, Rescue Lake Simcoe Coalition, and Reform Gravel Coalition, which is great. We have organized these debates because the outcome of this election will set the course for our province for years to come. With many people struggling, inequity growing, poverty rates rising, the climate crisis becoming more pressing by the day, Just Recovery Simcoe wanted to present a debate that is focused on these issues and the solutions that parties are committing to. Today's candidates are vying for the opportunity to take this matter seriously and advocate on behalf of our shared environment and social determinants of health at the provincial level. We can no longer afford policies that exacerbate climate breakdown or hurt the health of our communities and the people within them. And the time is obviously now is for action. Before we begin, I'd like to also acknowledge the traditional Indigenous territories we are situated in. We are gathering in the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people. Locally, we'd like to honor the Chippewas Tri-Council, which includes Rama First Nation, Georgina Island First Nation, and Beausoleil Island First Nation, and acknowledge that their ancestors were the first stewards of these lands. Via the Williams Treaty and others, agreements have been made that were meant to be shared and that honors nature and life in the way that we've been given. History and present day issues clearly demonstrate that we are not living up to this intention or promise, unfortunately. To have hope for future generations, we must recognize the value of each other, reconcile for past and ongoing tragedies, and ensure compassionate care and concern for all. Further, we recognize that the various components of our ecosystem, air, land, water, flora, and fauna, are all interdependent and need to work in harmony. The only way forward is together. As potential members of provincial parliament, we ask our candidates to uphold choices and policies that address truth and reconciliation in a genuine way. So we have two candidates today. We were invited to today's debate were the Green Party Krystal Brooks, who I've understand has a personal issue. She may not be able to attend today. We also had the Ontario Party, who was supposed to attend and said he was sick as well. We have not heard from Jill Dunlop's office, despite numerous attempts. So we will be moving on. Oh, sorry, I've got a message here. I should just double check this. Okay, so sorry, Krystal has technical issues and having difficulty connecting. So maybe we will hopefully see her shortly. Before we get started, I'm just going to review the structure for the audience's convenience. Each candidate will be asked 7 preset questions, and these were shared with the candidate prior to the debate. The first question is a rapid fire where candidates will only be able to answer in a nonverbal yes, no, unsure by way of thumbs. Yes, no, and unsure. Then we'll select questions from the audience after those 7 preset questions are done. And as I said earlier, feel free to submit your question in the Q&A feature or through the chat. Now, just to be clear, questions in order to make it to the candidates have to be, sorry, here we got Krystal coming, that's great. Questions from the audience must be addressed to all candidates, be respectful, and pertain to the concerns of the debate. Thank you for joining us, Krystal.
I figured it out. Sorry, I'm not very tech savvy.
No, that's okay. For each question, candidates will have 1.5 minutes to respond. And Bree from Jubilee House has a little tone. If you want to play that one more time, Bree. One more time. It's a little light, but when you hear that, that's your 10-second count. That means you have 10 seconds left. Once time is expired, she will be muting you, and I'll announce the next candidate's turn. We kind of went through this. Unfortunately, Krystal, sorry, you didn't get to go with the debrief, so it's a little bit on the fly for you. But we've decided about who's going in what order. But at the beginning of each question, I'll announce to the audience the order of who's going. So no worry about that, to keep track. At the end of each question, the candidates will be asked if they would like to add on to their question. Basically, how that works is you get 2 of those throughout the debate. You can only use 1 per question. And that additional 2 minutes is used to reframe, expand, further frame a question. Maybe if you want to re-answer it, it is not meant to be posing your question to another candidate. And then finally, before we get started, we urge each of you to encourage others to vote and put the health and well-being of our communities and planet at the forefront of your decision. The meeting is being recorded and the final video will be available on Just Recovery Simcoe's YouTube channel. And I really want to thank all of the candidates for coming today. I think, you know, attending debates is a bare minimum that elected officials, if they're looking for a vote, need to do. So I appreciate all that have responded and those that are here for sure. Okay, so we're going to start with introductions. The candidates each have 1 minute for introductions. And the order for this is that, sorry, I should introduce the candidates. We have Aaron, who is with the Liberal Party. Cayden Hiltz, sorry, I should add your whole name. We have Dr. Elizabeth Van Houtte from the NDP and Krystal Brooks from the Green Party of Ontario. Okay, so now that I've done that little introduction, I'm going to ask the candidates to give us a little bit more information. Again, Aaron, you'll be going first, followed by Elizabeth, and then followed by Krystal. And we have 1 minute for this section.
Cool. Thank you, Margaret, Paige, Madeline, Bree, and the folks from Just Recovery Simcoe. It's really important topics we're going to be covering tonight as they pertain to our environments and the health and safety of our collective future, to be able to live and breathe the air and use the water that we have around us, as people have done for a long time. I'm Aaron Cayden Hiltz. I'm the Ontario Liberal Party candidate for Simcoe North. 30 years old. I'm finishing my degree in political science and law at Lakehead University in my home of Orillia. I've had a lot of chances to speak to a lot of different people over the course of the campaign, and on the top of the list, right up there with affordability, has been climate change. So I'm excited to, you know, share some ideas with everyone here tonight and to have some meaningful discussion with folks afterwards. So thank you.
I muted myself. There you go. What kind of example am I setting for everybody? Elizabeth, you're next.
Hi, sorry for the barking dog, but you know, we're all working at home and the squirrels are tormenting them badly. Thank you for the invite. I'm so pleased to be here this afternoon to comment and on these very important issues of life here in Simcoe North and in this province and on this planet. Elizabeth Van Houtte, NDP, Simcoe North. I live here in Orillia. I have twin daughters that are 16 years old. They are the love of my life on most days. And I'm married and I've called Orillia home for 12 years. I have a doctorate degree in social work and moved to Orillia specifically to teach at Lakehead. So I did contract work with Lakehead, Laurentian, and Georgian College. Now I'm in private practice. I'm 38 years practicing social work. I always like to tell people I started.
Sorry, that's the end of the time. It's just a minute. We run a tight ship. What can you say? All right, Krystal, you have 1 minute for a quick introduction.
So my name is Krystal. I am the Green Party candidate. I am I'm from Rammer First Nation. I have lived in Orillia for much of my life. I moved here when I was about 10. And I am a mother to 3 children, 2 of which are biologically mine. And my youngest, he is every bit as special as my boys. And like, I love being a mom. And when I'm not being a mom, I am very active in both the Green Party of Ontario and the Green Party of Canada. I am the co-chair on the Ombuds and Appeals Committee for the Green Party of Canada. I am awaiting the election results to see if I will be representing Ontario for the Federal Council of the Green Party of Canada. And I'm just really happy to be here today and have this important discussion. We need to be talking about our climate. It's really important. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, that was your slow introduction, right? That was your easy part. So as I mentioned earlier, the first question is what we're going to call the rapid fire. Candidates are going to answer simultaneously, but non-verbally by use of thumb, yes, no, unsure. Okay. The very first question is, do you support reinstatement of the Environmental Commissioner's Office of Ontario? All right, I see thumbs up for all. Do you support municipal ranked ballots? Agreement again from all parties. Do you support implementing a wealth tax? Yes, Aaron, Elizabeth, and Krystal all agree. Do you support raising the minimum wage? Agreement through all parties, thank you. Will you raise supports for Ontario Works ODSP above the poverty line and index to inflation? Yeah, double thumbs up from Krystal. I think you only get to vote once, Krystal, but everybody else agrees. Will you support a moratorium on all new gravel minings in approvals in Ontario? Yes, I'll agree. Will you reinstate the Ontario Child Advocate Office? Yes, yes, yes. Krystal, Elizabeth, Aaron, all agree. I should put a harder one in here so that you guys would have to all separate. Will you strengthen the funding and mandates of conservation authorities? Again, all agreed. Thank you. Will you strengthen protection for endangered species and wetlands? Yes. Thank you, candidates. Will you strengthen the Lakes and Protection Act to stop sprawl, reduce phosphorus loading, and ensure we have 40% high quality natural cover along the shores? All agree. Thank you. Finally, will you stop construction of the Bradford Bypass and other 400 series highways in the Greenbelt? All agree. Thank you. Does anybody want to use their add-on to elaborate any of those? No? Okay. All right, we're moving on to question 2. And this one goes, and Madeline will be putting these questions into the chat for audience accessibility. So our water health from wetlands to Lake Simcoe to Lake Couchiching to groundwater is under increasing pressure from climate impacts as well as sprawl and aggregate. To protect it, it will require all levels of government to do more than it historically has done, including intervening on projects that are a direct threat. What are you going to do to protect our water systems? And for this question order, I see Krystal has gone off, so I'm going to adjust the order. Aaron, you're going to go first, followed by Elizabeth, and then hopefully Krystal can rejoin and she can go at the end. And there is 1.5 minutes for this question.
Thanks, Margaret. So I grew up on the shores of Lake Simcoe, so that water has a lot of personal meaning to me. I learned to swim there. I learned to fish there. A lot of my childhood memories are kind of centered around that lake, so its health is very important to me. I want my children to be able to swim and fish there just like I did. I started to see the pollution there when I was really young. It's really only gotten worse. Phosphorus, salination. They're obviously huge issues that affect Lake Simcoe. So the development and implementation of a solid plan to reduce those contaminants will be on the top of the priority list. Canceling the Bradford bypass is part of that. It's going to be it's really central to any crucial attempt to protect the lake from further contamination. Groundwater is really an issue that's important to me, specifically in Tiny Township. Over the past month, I've been meeting with some residents there and various groups that are fighting the aggregate mining expansion that has, very obvious and very clear implications on the groundwater. The Alliston Aquifer is underneath that. It's known to many as being the gold standard of water in the world, and this is something that absolutely needs to be protected. I was happy to be at the Elmvale water kiosk a few weeks ago, and I spoke there about how important it is to protect those collective resources. And I have a really deep personal connection to the flow in Elmvale. I was adopted when I was 17, and my mom, we had a farm just outside of Orillia, and part of my farm chores meant driving over there, filling up those massive jugs. So countless people across the community really depend on that. I'm proud to support a 5-year moratorium on gravel mining in that location, and a 5-year study of its effects on the groundwater. Like that being said.
Sorry, Aaron. Time is up. I don't know, Bree, I hate to do this to you, but I feel like that needs to be a little louder. So we need a clap or something instead, maybe.
I can say something instead, because like it's
Can
really loud.
Okay, maybe just a beep. Whatever, something like that. Yeah, sorry. Sorry about that, Aaron, but you can feel free to use your extending at the end of this question if you choose. Hi, Krystal, glad to have you back. Just so you know, if down the road, if that happens again, I don't want you to stress. What we'll do is we'll just move on to the next person. Then hopefully we can have you join, or you'll be able to make up for any questions that were missed. So don't stress about it. We live in Simcoe County, and all of us know how terrible the internet is here. It depends where you go. So no one's going to hold it against you. All right. So to continue on, I have you going last, Krystal. So Elizabeth, this is your chance for 1.5 minutes to talk about groundwater protection and water protection.
And I'm going to work my hardest to get this in. Our water is very important to us here in the world in general, and we have beautiful clean water, as Aaron has referred to, that's being threatened through aggregate mining, and the pressure on and the impact on sprawl is also a concern for me and for our party. We have a plan called the Green New Democratic Deal. It has actually been out for over a year now, and we've just announced some of the details, including establishing Ontario's first youth core climate core, restoring the powers of the Environmental Commissioner, and planting 1 billion trees by 2030. We are committed to ensure that everyone in Ontario has access to clean drinking water, and will launch an interministerial provincial strategy to guarantee public access to sustainable water sources. We'll launch a transparent public view to review the permit to take water, so that corporations are not coming in taking our water away from us, especially to bottle it and sell it back to us. And we will restore integrity to the land and planning, and end the abuse. Okay, thanks.
Sorry, that was my beep warning.
To end the abuse of the minister's zoning orders while revoking all MCOs that harm the public interest. Thank you. So I was on time. I was on time.
Yes, you were on time. And I appreciate candidates for you being flexible with us, but we've had some technical issues in the background. It just seems to be one of those days. There's something going on here. Okay, so we're going to go to Krystal. If you hear Bree say 10, that means you've got 10 seconds left. You don't have to finish. You have 1.5 minutes to discuss about protecting water.
Yeah, I'm so glad I'm not the only one having tech issues. So my Anishinaabe name is actually Biwabik Nabekwe, which means Stillwater Woman, and I'm Turtle Clan. So my connection to the water is fairly personal. So it's something that I really, really care about, and it's something that I've been actively engaged in for a very long time. So I would continue doing what I have been doing, which is advocating for the water and advocating for clean drinking water for all. Mike Schreiner has actually called for a moratorium on gravel mining. Here in Ontario, we extract 13 times the amount of gravel that we actually consume here in Ontario. And the Alliston Aquifer is the world's purest water, and it's literally being used to wash gravel. And this is not okay. And it's so much more insulting, just the fact that we don't need that gravel. So it's really upsetting, but also, restoring the funding to source water protection, expanding the green belt to include a blue belt, which protects our wetlands and our water, protecting lakes and fisheries. And, there's lots of things in our platform that
And
would really help this. And I'm really happy with the Green Party platform on this. So thank you.
Thank you, candidates. Does anybody want to use their 2-minute add-on for this question? Okay, not seeing any, then I will move on to, we have a question about climate change. The International Panel on Climate Change has made it clear that swift and deep changes are needed to ensure a future livable planet. Specifically around reducing fossil fuel infrastructure, preserving nature, changing land use and transportation patterns. How will your government rise to the challenge to avert a climate crisis as much as possible? And for this question, the order is Elizabeth, followed by Krystal, and then ending with Aaron. And you have 1.5 minutes for this question until Bree goes 10, and then you only have 10 seconds left. All right, so Elizabeth, you're up first.
All right, thank you so much. It's a great question, of course, and the essence of this debate. We, as the NDP, will bring back the emphasis on green energy that Ford had canceled, moving to affordable electric. We'll draw on other jurisdictions that keep electricity prices low by delivering power at a cost instead of for profit. And we'll expand hydro, electricity, and low affordable renewables like wind and solar power. Our climate jobs Houtte platform, you can find it, will launch one of the world's largest green building retrofit programs in this province, and will create 1 million jobs over that plan. We are committed to building a public, residential, and commercial buildings that will be net zero by 2030, and a new cap and trade program as well, and electrifying all municipal transits by 2040. Those are our plans, those are our commitments, and we would, one of the things I'm most excited about is involving the youth in their future and developing this youth corps that is committing to planting 1 billion trees by 2030. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. All right, on to you, Krystal.
So all issues, every issue that we hear about, particularly social justice issues, all those issues lead back to climate change. All of those issues impact climate change, and climate change impacts those issues. And we are the only party with the strongest platform on climate change. Our platform includes things, about a clean and fair economy, a greener economy, and cutting transit costs that would hopefully help decrease the amount of cars on the road, as well as making electric vehicles more affordable and more accessible for people is really, really important. They're not very accessible at the moment. But reducing transit emissions is very, very important in this. And everything in our platform includes respect for Indigenous people. Our policies are very, very important. They're very viable, and they will help the situation, but absolutely nothing is going to correct climate change. It's not going to stop it. It's happening. The idea here is to slow it down as much as possible, and we have viable solutions to do that. And just a greener way forward is what we're looking for and what we advocate for.
Well, you even got into the 10 timeline. Good for you, Krystal. All right, and last but not least, we have Aaron. You have 1.5 minutes to discuss about climate.
Thanks, Margaret. I'm really proud about our progressive platform for environmental protection. I've been studying it and providing feedback to the party for the past few weeks, everything from planting 800 million trees to creating 5 new provincial parks. I'm going to advocate for one of those provincial parks to be in our area, investing in public transit all over the province, designating 30% of the land in the province as protected, and expanding the Greenbelt way into Simcoe County. I think are really good ideas to start. The transit proposal is a really good proposal for people all over the riding. I've used Ontario Northland, I've used Midland and Orillia transit systems, and when you're using those frequently, the cost can really add up. So our proposal is pretty bold in that regard. We want people to be able to travel for around only $1 a ride, because that includes buses. We don't have to drive while paying these astronomical gas prices. So we're really going across the board with this one. I'm taking climate change incredibly seriously. I'm going to fight tooth and nail to make sure that our mitigation efforts are top notch. And I'm really excited to see new provincial parks and large land masses being protected to significantly reduce emissions. And I'm also part of a generation that, fears for the future of our kids because of climate change. So, win or lose, I plan on working hard to address that. I want to bring my kids into a world that's sustainable. So thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. I wasn't meaning to laugh at the end because you were actually very, very solemn little end there, but then Bree with the 10. It's funny that in our Barrie Springwater Oromadante, we had the chime, and the candidates were just like this, and so we started to joke it was the chime of death, because people were just responding. And so you know what, I guess there has to be a little bit of like on your edge, on the seat of your pants kind of thing, because if you get to the legislature, I mean, it's not going to be different. You're going to feel the pressure there too, right? So we're doing a service. We're doing a service for you today. Okay, now we're going to move on to, does anybody have a rebuttal or an add-on for this question that they want to add their 2 minutes to? Okay, not seeing any. Question 4, how will you implement the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People and the calls to action in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission? Again, it's 1.5 minutes, and the order for this I have starting with Aaron, followed by Elizabeth, and then finally rounding out with Krystal. All right, Aaron, you have 1.5 minutes.
Thanks. So under the Constitution, section 91 and 92, they outlined the responsibilities of the provincial and federal governments. The governing of Indigenous people is federal, but that doesn't mean that Ontario can't play a role in repairing the relationship between Indigenous people and then our settler colonial society here. There are boil water advisories in more than 40 First Nations communities as of today. This is unacceptable. It's unacceptable on so many levels. And, the Conservatives are totally unwilling to do anything about it, but we can work with these communities in partnership with the federal government, and we can be vocal and demand that action be taken because all of us, Indigenous or not, we deserve the right to clean water. Ontario also has a really rough past when it comes to dealing with Indigenous peoples. I studied Ipperwash. I think that was 1995. It's a really clear example of this. The OPP, they killed Dudley George, who he was protesting about a land dispute. In terms of policing, which Ontario deals with through the OPP, it's really clear that we need some kind of reform. Indigenous people are also overrepresented in the criminal justice system, and they have disproportionate incarceration rates. So I'm not sure if a lot of folks have heard about the Purdue principle, but I think it's something that we need to use more often. It takes into consideration the damage that colonialism has done to our Indigenous communities during pretrial sentencing. So we really need to acknowledge this damage, not only to try to understand it and how it has impacted Indigenous people, but to take swift action to remedy it, because we know that there's anti-Indigenous racism in police.
Sorry, Aaron, you ran out of time. I saw that Bree was trying to be very gentle about it. So I don't know if you heard that or not, but you can add on to this question with your 2 minutes if you wish. All right, Elizabeth, we're up to you now.
Thank you. This topic is near and dear to me on many levels, and we in Simcoe North we have a significant amount of Indigenous people. We have Rama, we have Busley Island, and we also have a significant amount of Métis communities in this riding. So they have said, and I've talked to them, that they have felt unheard on many levels. This is their land, and they feel like they know that they're not being heard. So what I would propose as the next MPP, what we're doing as a party, is we're establishing a provincial strategy to address suicide in First Nations youth. and to work with the Indigenous population on a housing strategy. And lastly, to transform and establish community control of child welfare. Our MPP Sol Mamakwa introduced the Private Members Bill 76 to do just that, to assist our Indigenous communities in taking control. And I personally am committed to establishing a circle of elders and knowledge keepers and designed by the Indigenous communities here, and to listen to their advice and their plans. They know who they are.
Now I forgot to unmute myself. Thank you for that, Elizabeth. And Krystal, 1.5 minutes for this question.
This is kind of like this is my topic. I know no other topic as well as I know Indigenous rights, and that I am an Indigenous person, but I don't have an answer today. Today, somebody vandalized one of my Green Party signs, and one of the things that they said on that sign, what they wrote on the sign, was "Go back to the reserve." It was a little bit more colorful than that, but I can't talk about the rights of Indigenous people right now when my rights were just harmed. And there's 46 articles in the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, and at least 6 of my rights were violated in that. And there are 94 calls to action in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and several of my rights were violated based on that as well. The MMIW inquiry calls to action. There's so many. Yeah, I don't have the words today.
Understandable, Krystal, and I feel for you. Your whole speech just gave me chills. So I'm sorry that there's people that exist in our community that think that that's appropriate. I apologize. Okay, so I don't know if anybody wants to address this issue more fully with an additional 2 minutes. Aaron?
Yeah, please. Before I get into what I was talking about earlier, like Krystal, so sorry that happened to you. I dealt with some vandalism at my house, and I was pissed about it, but it wasn't racially motivated, so I didn't feel like I was in too much danger. And the fact that happened in front of your house with that kind of language is absolutely unacceptable. I mean, everyone on my team has expressed that's BS. So I'm really sorry that you had to deal with that, and we're all thinking about you today. So going back to what I was saying before about disproportionate incarceration rates, I wanted to talk about the Purdue principle and its effects and what it can do to help alleviate the issue around disproportionate incarceration rates. That's something that exists in legal code today. It's not used very often. We'd like to see that used more often. So we're not seeing so many Indigenous people sent to prison and being criminalized. We need to take really swift action to kind of remedy those things. Incarceration of Indigenous people affects Indigenous families. They're dealing with intergenerational trauma, dealing with substance abuse brought on by intergenerational trauma. The 60s scoop in residential schools, they all have long-lasting impacts on these people. And if we want to address it meaningfully and bring back some equity, then we need to make sure that we were willing to do the work to do that. Thanks.
All right. Okay, for this next two questions, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Paige, who will introduce herself, and she'll be presenting the next couple of questions to you.
Great. Good afternoon, candidates. I am Paige Jacobczak, the fundraising coordinator at Couchiching Jubilee House, a transitional housing organization in Orillia. As a transitional housing provider, we are acutely aware of the lack of inventory for affordable housing and the escalating affordable housing crisis that is pushing more and more people into precarity every day. In the long run, not addressing the crisis means a generation of young Ontarians will have a lower standard of living than their parents and grandparents before them, while landlords, real estate agents, and developers are making exorbitant profits. Young people have little to no hope of home ownership, even with high levels of education and employment. With stagnant wages and average housing prices hovering around $900,000, we need immediate action in this province to address housing affordability. What measures would you take to ensure housing as a right? And how would you pair this with efforts to make housing more affordable for all? Okay, and the first candidate to answer, I believe, is Krystal.
So I believe it was last year, actually, where the NDP put forward a bill, Bill 252, where housing as a human right, and Mike Schreiner did support that, and it was really nice to see parties working together on that and advocating for housing as a human right, because it is a human right. Here in Orillia, I don't know what the statistics are elsewhere, but we have approximately 30 youth that are homeless right now, and that is so sad, and that is so wrong, and it's devastating. In our platform, we are looking at building 100,000 new units by 2023, or sorry, by 2025, yeah, just really tackling the homeless and housing crisis right now, because they both go hand in hand, and they're both very important, and we need to be doing more for our housing issues and our homeless population. So thank you.
Okay, and next is Aaron.
Thanks, Paige. So the housing crisis is brutal. There's no two ways about it. Like Paige said, I'm part of a generation that has been sold this massive lie, work hard, save your money, get a good job, you'll be able to own a home. It doesn't work anymore. The market's so inflated, it's becoming impossible for, people my age to buy a house. I have friends who are dealing with this right now. I have family who are dealing with this right now. So this is happening to every young person who has done what they're supposed to do, and they're now unable to reap the benefits. The solution isn't only to just build more houses or more subdivision, and which adds to more sprawl and more roads and more cars and more of everything. But, the Conservatives, they're so out of touch with reality, and they're so, obsessed with benefiting their developer donors that they think the solution is just to continue building these $800,000 houses. It's not. The real solution is affordable housing, cracking down hard on those developers and those speculators who hold land until they can make the most profit out of it. It's cracking down on foreign investment and regulating how much land a corporation is allowed to own in a certain area. It's working with municipalities really and the feds to create more affordable housing projects, to decrease the skyrocketing cost of living so that, money goes further. And, I'm someone who has spent time homeless as a kid. I've slept at parks and basketball courts, and I really understand how bad it can be. If there's anything that I can do to ensure that, this doesn't happen to people anymore, then I'm absolutely going to do it. Thanks, Paige.
And next is Elizabeth.
I couldn't agree more. My counterparts here have already talked about the important key issues around housing is a human right. And we've seen this coming for some time. It's not new. The problem is that it became out of control very, very quickly, and it happened under our noses. And everyone should have a place to live and a safe place to live. So as your MPP, certainly looking at refurbishing existing buildings that people can afford to live in. And we've also going to top up for those that are low income and help them pay their rent with other financial support. And we also are going to help with CMHC, a 10% purchase on your home for the down payment. We will take on greedy developers and billionaires and foreign investors and bad apple landlords, and to cool the market. And we'll get this done by ending homelessness and giving people safe and affordable housing by building 100 new affordable housing, and 260 existing homes will be refurbished. And our goal is to restore homelessness, or to restore, we will restore the end of homelessness.
Okay, and just a reminder, everyone still has their add-on rebuttals. Everyone has 2 except Aaron has 1. So anyone can choose to jump in, or we can move to the next question. So next question. Okay. 80% of our health outcomes are tied to the social determinants of health, such as income, housing, transportation, health of environment, food, security, racism, discrimination, and access to education. What are your 3 main priorities to address the social determinants of health for everyone? And the first candidate to answer is Elizabeth.
Thank you for that question. Again, really near and dear to me as a veteran social worker, and dealing with people at their worst and most vulnerable times. First of all, we need to fully fund our healthcare system back to where it was 30 years. We've had 30 years of governments that have shaved it to its bone, and we've seen what happened with the pandemic. So I'm most proud to share with you, and many of you already know, is our mental health system. You will pay for with your OHIP card, not your credit card, and it will be fully integrated community mental health. Mental health is physical health. Also pharmacare and dental care, 2 very, very important pieces to the well-being. And $20 minimum wage will help. That's coming up, and 10 permanent sick days. Anything that what happens in your life and what happens in your world, you're not going to go under and live on the edge as a result. And standing up for small business, not the big box stores as well. And I'm also happy to and proud to share that we believe in aging in place and overhauling long-term care, taking privatization out of long-term care, and having people age in the home where they want to be at the time with the supports that they need. So very proud of our platform. Thank you, and looking forward to delivering it.
Okay, and the next candidate to answer is Krystal.
So the first priority for me would be a universal basic income, just lifting all those people out of poverty, and really helping them meet their basic needs, which includes housing and food on their table. UBI, I think one of the biggest misunderstandings with UBI is that it's more money. It's more tax dollars, it's a reallocation of pre-existing funds. So a lot of the funds that exist now would be shifted around and go into a UBI, and we wouldn't need some of those other fundings. But yeah, so a UBI is a really important one for me, as well as healthcare, making it accessible for everybody. There are people right now, abortion is a really big issue for a lot of people right now, especially with everything going on in the States. There are people in Canada, living in Canada and Ontario, that cannot access an abortion, despite the fact that we are able to have an abortion here in Canada. And that's so sad that they can't even access that. Making healthcare more accessible, which includes mental health, dental care, and oral care, because that's part of our health as well. And for the third, the economy, and yeah, it's fair.
Okay, and Aaron, you can go ahead.
Thanks, Paige. So in short, we want to raise wages. And then also I'm going to push for a regional living wage because we know that the cost of living in Toronto is much different than it is in Midland or Orillia, and it's different in North Bay. So, you know, bringing up those wages is going to be really important. Many of us here, we live in rural communities, so there's travel costs and, you know, we don't have grocery stores on every corner. I lived in Wabashine during the pandemic and the closest grocery store was like in the next town over. So we need to recognize how regional cost of living affect us. Second, access to education is going to be a big issue, and it's really important to me. You know, the last 4 years have been brutal and, you know, riddled with cuts. The Ontario Liberals expanded OSAP in 2018. That helped a lot of my friends go to school. Addressing student debt is really important. We know that a lot of new jobs are going to require some sort of post-secondary education, whether that be a certificate, a degree, diploma. So we got to make sure that, you know, people are able to get good jobs through education. And transportation being the third, because our social systems are really only as good as we can access them. So, you know, we can put all we want into hospitals and education, but if people can't go there from rural communities, then that poses a significant issue. So our transportation plan is something that I'm really proud of. Buck or Ride, Ontario Northland, all municipal transit. It's something that everyone can really benefit from.
Paige, do you want to finish off with the add-ons? Do you want me to take over? Oh,
It looks like Elizabeth can jump in.
Thank you. There's so much to say. This is such a big topic that encompasses so many different things. But I did not mention, Krystal, you prompted me with the UBI that last week we announced the 20% increase for those people on ODSP and OW immediately upon our election, and that will be doubled by year 2 with the goal of by year 4 that people would be at a living wage. We're calling it a living wage. It's the same as the universal basic income. We can't forget what happened. We had some excellent research-based pilot projects going on across this province on universal basic income, and they were axed immediately upon Ford's government. We know that they work, and again, I go to the people who are on the ground who can tell me what it's like. We're going to go back. We want to implement that basic pilot project again. So I just wanted to say that it's income, it's health, it's bottom line is this: if you don't have a healthy and educated society, you don't have a vibrant economy. Until we get the social detriments of health in line, we're not going to be able to build our economy to its capacity, which it can be built. Thank you.
Okay, and did anyone else want to jump in with a rebuttal? No? Okay, and Margaret, Krystal, okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to mention that the approximate cost of living here in Canada is actually over $2,000, and it's sitting at about $2,600, and a 40% increase in ODSP, which is currently sitting at $1,169, is absolutely not enough. And the Green Party of Ontario is wanting to double that cost. Thank you.
All right, and if no one else is going to jump in, I'll pass it back to Margaret to ask the next question.
thanks, Paige. Just give me 1 second here. There we go. Okay, so this one has feels about the same, but it has a little bit of a different spin because we're talking about how the COVID-19 pandemic, what it further revealed. We already talked about the inequity. But when it comes to the COVID-19 pandemic and the inequities that it further revealed, they were already there. How would you propose to address the inequities that were brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic? And there's 1.5 minutes. For this question, Aaron will go first, followed by Elizabeth, and then finally Krystal. Aaron, you can start your 1.5 minutes.
Thanks, Margaret. So this is something that I've been studying for a little while now. I wrote a bunch of papers about this last year. We talk so much about, congratulating our frontline workers. A lot of those workers are nurses, healthcare professionals, tradespeople, retail workers. They've all been subjected to unsafe conditions during the pandemic, and with how limited the pay is for a lot of these sectors and how unequal the pandemic has been for a lot of us, it's really necessary that we do something to address this. Middle class jobs, they were able to transition to work from home models, while many others were left to kind of fend for themselves. One of the ways that we can combat this is to ensure that every single worker in the province, regardless of your job, has access to 10 paid sick days. We want to increase the wages for people working in a lot of these sectors, and then adjust it annually according to inflation. So raising the minimum wage to bring up some economic dignity back to these folks. I'm going to talk about post-secondary education again, because it's going to be really important going forward. I was adopted when I was 17. Family made massive sacrifices to give me that, but we couldn't afford to pay, $50,000 for me to go to school for 4 years. So I relied on work opportunities. And I think that that's not really a reflection of reality anymore. Most students work for a minimum wage. So the Universal Basic Income Pilot Project, before the Conservatives canceled it, we're going to bring that back and expand it as well.
Aaron, and just a reminder, I'll ask if anybody wants to use their add-on after this, if you wanted to go further. Okay, Elizabeth, it's your turn. This is our last preset question.
Thank you. We will recover. It was devastating. The worst possible scenario in my world is a conservative government getting elected, and a year and a half later, we are hit with a pandemic. We need to be prepared for pandemics and disasters. So why didn't we have a plan? No one knew it was coming, but we still need to be prepared. We need a climate emergency protection plan as well. When there's flooding, when there's the effects of climate, if there's a threat, if there's civil unrest, we need to have a plan in place, a collective plan in place. And so it was like we got slapped and we were scrambling, because all of those systems that were put in place over years were scrapped by governments going, don't need it, don't want it, it's too expensive. And then we got caught in a terrible situation. Now, what I'm getting at here is those systems were shaved to the bone or eliminated. And what that did to people of color, to women, to elders, to small businesses, to essential workers, is put them in a very precarious situation because they were already under. And Bill 124 showed that in education and healthcare.
Sorry, Elizabeth, at a time. Last but not least is Krystal. You have 1.5 minutes.
So I guess the question is, how do you propose to address these inequities? First off, I don't think that we fully understand the inequities at this point. We haven't had those hard conversations. We talk about the pandemic and how it's affected small businesses and how it's affected the majority of people, but there's quite a few people who are left out of that conversation, and it's really important that we actually start including them into the conversation. And I know that there's a lot of opinions out there, but the fact is like I know somebody who was living in a transition home and told that she had to get the COVID vaccine or she would have to leave. She had a baby, she had a newborn, and child welfare would have gotten involved. That's not consent, and we're not having these hard conversations, and they are hard. They're really hard, as we saw with the convoy protests, and I am in no way supporting what happened there. I don't. The fact is I support people, and there are a lot of differing opinions out there, and one isn't any more important than the other. They all matter in this. It's how we go about expressing those opinions. And I agree that many have expressed those opinions in very, very negative ways. But there are people who are expressing their opinions in positive ways. And I think that we really need to address those inequities.
Got that last word in the nick of time there, Krystal. All right, so for add-ons, Elizabeth, Aaron, I believe you still have one left, right? Yep, and Krystal, Aaron? Okay, go ahead. You have 2 minutes to add on to this question.
Yeah, so thank you. Yeah, like I said, like a lot of those frontline workers, they weren't treated adequately. Being subjected to infection like that for very, very low pay and no paid sick days is a tragedy, really. The small businesses in our community, like I have a friend who runs a small business in downtown Orillia, and the pandemic really hurt them, you know, as opposed to, you know, Walmart and Costco, who are allowed to, you know, run seemingly unimpeded. They had, you know, infrastructure that they had built, you know, they have their delivery systems. Amazon is one of those things. These mega corporations got so much more wealthy over the course of the pandemic, while small businesses, local mom and pop shops all over the place were forced to close. And a lot of these places were operating for like 20 plus years, right? So it really highlights the imbalance between these mega corporations and these small businesses, and something needs to be done to absolutely address that. And that's something that we've been working on for a little while, is proposing, you know, the elimination of corporate tax on small businesses for the next 2 years, so we can try to close that gap, and also eliminating the incorporation fee for new businesses that want to start, because we know that like small businesses are really the heart of our local economy. $1 spent at a small business is spent somewhere else in the community, whether that be, you know, sponsoring a soccer or a hockey team, or donating to local charities. So economically, we really need to tighten that gap. Back to the universal basic income pilot project, we're gonna absolutely bring that back. That's kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to join the Liberals, is because that project did so well for so many families. And when I saw the data, they spent a lot of that money on personal development, dental care, you know, all the things that really help people escape poverty. So I'm going to push for it to come back, to be reinstated and expanded, so that we can meaningfully fight poverty in the future.
Thank you, Aaron. All right, so that concludes the preset questions. Krystal or Elizabeth, neither of you wanted to add on, I'm assuming? I didn't see any indication. Okay. So Aaron, you're out of add-ons. Krystal, I believe you still have one. And Elizabeth, I still believe you still have one, according to my calculations. Anybody on the team, if I got the count wrong, let me know. Okay, so that concludes that part. Sorry, I also have a dog who's got a squeaky toy right now. I don't know if you can hear it, but the questions, I'm going to be passing it over to Madeline here in a little bit from Green Orillia. So some of the questions were submitted ahead of time. Some of them were submitted by attendees here. All of the questions have been vetted for relevance, decorum, and ability to be posed to all candidates. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to respond to the 3 questions that have been selected from the audience questions. And Elizabeth and Krystal, you still have an add-on left, so you could choose to do that. If you have any, and to the audience, if you have any questions that were not answered here today, and there's, you know, we don't have endless time, then I encourage each of you to reach out to the candidates personally. And once I pass over to Madeline, then I will put the candidate emails there so that we can get in touch. All right, Madeline, I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to allow you to take the floor for the last little bit.
Hi everyone, my name is Madeline Fournier. I'm here from Green Orillia and Stop Sprawl Orillia. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you to Just Recovery Simcoe and Margaret for putting this on. So the first audience question is, if elected, what will you do to improve Ontario's democracy and ensure our electoral system makes every vote count? So the first person who is going to be answering this question is Krystal. You have 1.5 minutes.
I really like proportional representation, and I can't remember. Somebody was asking it on online last night, yeah, it's actually been in in the Green Party platform since 2012. It's been in our platform for a decade. And yeah, no, I really like proportional representation, and I think we need to do away with the first past the post system, but it benefits too many people right now that are making all of the decisions. So we still have first past the post system, and it allows the way for a false majority. And yeah, I think we absolutely need electoral reform. So keep it short and sweet for you.
Okay, the next person is Aaron.
Thanks, Madeline. So my official party platform is for ranked ballot, but I think one of the more important things to recognize is just getting past first past the post. So we know, how detrimental it's been for a lot of communities who feel underrepresented, or especially in a riding like Simcoe North that's been conservative for, I don't know, like the better part of 100 years when it was Simcoe East, right? So a lot of people here feel, especially progressives, they feel like, oh, okay, well, it doesn't matter who I vote for because the conservatives are going to always win. Like, we need to address that issue in a meaningful way. So getting past first past the post is going to be a priority for me. The more research and the more people that I talk to, it's going to help form a stronger opinion about which sort of form that we're going to see going forward. But I think the absolute priority is to just get past first past the post, and then have meaningful conversations with the community about what we can implement after that. Thanks.
Thank you. And then Liz is the last one.
I love this question because, as you may know, the NDP has put that in our platform, that we will actively pursue mixed proportional representation. We know what first past the post has done. What I hear from people is my vote doesn't matter, because 40% of the people vote, and then you end up with the majority government who in fact only got 23% of the vote, right? So it's an old system that's archaic and doesn't work. And what it does is it disenfranchises people to the point where they don't feel their voice matters. The last thing we want is a society where people feel they don't have a say, and that they are represented in Queen's Park in an effective way. So I'm really looking forward to being one of the first governments to, when we get into power, to be able to push that forward. I know that the Liberals had talked about it on the federal level, and there's too much to lose, as I think Krystal alluded to. When you're in power, you don't want mixed proportional representation because you're going to lose your majority. And we see what majority governments do, and minority governments can work effectively together, but it's about hearing the people's voices. Thank you.
Thank you. Did anyone want to use a rebuttal or a add-on? Okay, we'll move on to the next question then. So the next question is, people can't afford food and large companies are making historic profits. The government dumped millions into food banks. We are being reactive, not proactive, around local food. Food grown locally is only afforded by the upper class. How will your party tackle food insecurity locally? And the order for this question is starting with Elizabeth, then Krystal, then Aaron.
This is a problem. I mean, I think we heard what Weston made during the pandemic. Just money, I can't count that high. Quite unfortunate. Seeing the number of people at food banks, 50, I think sharing place is 1,500 a month. And I just want to share with you that my father was an immigrant, and he said, you need to be happy when you have a roof over your head and a full belly. And I'm living at a time when that's not the case, which is quite disturbing in 2022. What are we going to do? Affordable housing, raising the minimum wage amount, giving people more resources to be able to buy it. Now, there are ways to control inflationary rates, but at the same time, the people need the money to be able to go and to be able to eat and have their basic needs met of food and housing. So it's a supply issue, and a supply and demand issue. That's inflation, and we need to take a look at how we can bridge that gap. And most of the time, it's bringing people up. People haven't had an increase in wages for many years, and the cost of living has gone up more than what people can afford. So that's what we're going to address in our various policies. Thanks for that question.
Thank you. Next up is Krystal.
Yeah, Elizabeth just said some really great things, and I think that those are all really important. Really addressing the cost of living right now, and things like increasing minimum wage, as well as universal basic income, which I've already talked about. I would like to see us moving away from the big box stores to be able to provide for our families, supporting more local businesses. But we can't forget about the workers that are working for these places as well. So like I said, increasing minimum wage is really, really important. But the Green Party advocates for like good green jobs, good clean jobs. So just creating more ecologically focused jobs would actually be an incentive to keep them away from the big box stores, and be putting more back into the environment, more into their communities. And there's lots of options out there, and I think that we really need to be focusing in on those options. And so thank you.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thanks, Madeline. So this is kind of a layered question. It's economical in the cost of living is really out of reach for a lot of people. The gas prices that move food around from where it's produced into communities is affecting a lot of these prices. But it's also a really strong environmental question as well. The agriculture industry that we've seen has been kind of attacked by sprawl and development, and the issuing of MZOs all over the province over the last 4 years has really affected people's ability to get food locally sourced. So I think some of the solutions to that would be, like Krystal said, like support local businesses, which I think is really important to combat that gap between these mega corporations and local businesses. Farmers markets, I think, are really cool and important. I learned how to grow some food over the course of the pandemic, but not nearly enough to feed myself, and I'm actually pretty terrible at it, so I'm not going to rely on that as a source, but encourage folks to do that. But we can deal with this in a way that's meaningful by attacking the cost of living, making sure that people can get around and have different options for food, and instead of just relying on the cheapest food possible, right, which is often found at like Walmart and places like that. So thanks.
Thank you. So the next question is, what mechanism would your government use to raise wages, not just minimum wages? So the first person to answer this question is going to be Aaron. Thanks,
Madeline. So raising minimum wages is going to be important because that's something that we can legislate, right? But if we're looking at all these new jobs being created that are primarily of that require some form of post-secondary education, then we really need to beef up a lot of those wages. I think it's a joke that goes around my generation, and I see this meme all the time, and it makes me laugh because it's like, we require a bachelor's degree and a master's degree and 8 years of work experience for $16 an hour. So I think collectively that's something that we can do as people, is just demand a little bit more, because these corporations and these mega rich companies, they've gotten rich from labor exploitation. That's just how it has happened, right? And for the first time in a long time during the pandemic and a little bit afterwards, we saw that it was kind of an employee's market and wages had to be brought up, right? So I think there's collective action that we can take in that regard. But raising the minimum wage is going to be something that's really important as well.
Thank you. And the next person to answer is going to be Elizabeth.
Thanks, Madeline. Yes, minimum wage matters, and Erin, I can't agree with you more. You know, the 12 years of education and 12 years of experience to not even make a living wage. And that's what people are experiencing. And it's horrendous when we see the wealthiest getting wealthier and wealthier and wealthier. That's a problem for sure. What will we do about it? And one of the things that I'm quite interested in is looking at the wage gap in terms of equity, and that people, regardless, of the type of work, if you have an MBA and you're working balancing a budget, and you're a PSW taking care of our elderly, why do we have such a wage discrepancy? You're absolutely correct in the exploitation of labor, and I have to say there's a reason why we have a labor shortage right now. People have had enough. They're not going to go and bust their butt for $15 an hour, have precarious employment, be sent home when there's no security. Oh, sorry, there's not enough consumers in the restaurant. You can go home now. People are reinventing themselves in a really lovely way, and that there's more entrepreneurship and more ways that people are not going to work as slaves. Well, their employers benefit tremendously. So equity and reinvention of how labor is conducted is what I would work for. Thank you.
Thank you. And then finally, Krystal.
Yeah, I'm just going to kind of parrot what Elizabeth said, and really focusing on that age gap, not just raising minimum wage, but like nurses and PSWs and, just healthcare workers and, all of them, they're not getting paid enough at all. This is one topic that I am more ignorant on. So it's something I'm still learning about. My work experience is very, very little. I can't put I can't put human trafficking or prostitution on my resume. So this is something that I'm, like I said, more ignorant on, but I am committed to looking more into this because I know it's important.
Thank you. Okay, so this is going to be the last audience question. This question is particularly important for me and for many of the Stop Sprawl members, because a lot of these Stop Sprawl movements are about, protecting local farmland, save the local farmland, but there's still the question of, okay, once it's protected, what's actually going to happen with it? Because the reality is that the average price of farmland in Oromodonte in many townships is around $3 million. So how can people actually afford farmland? So the question is, what will you do to not just protect the local farmland, but make it permanently and publicly accessible to new and young farmers, along with the training and support they need to transform our food system? And the first person who's going to be answering this one is Elizabeth.
I love the question. I am very much on board with the Stop the Sprawl. I'm a farm girl. I'm not sure if I've ever shared that with you, but I grew up on a farm and lived on a farm and know how food is produced. What I really love, it's not only about preserving our land, but it is accessibility to the land, because we do have these large urban centers. People don't know where their food comes from other than their grocery store. As Erin, you kind of alluded to a little bit earlier, and it's teaching people, teaching our youth, having the public be accessible to farmlands. I love the Lakehead project that you're talking about, and that I would support 100% that people can access that land, helping farmers financially to either buy the farms or to be able to afford them. The reason people are selling farms, they're retiring and their families don't want to do it because, believe me, it's very hard work. But what about the electricity prices that farmers have to pay for? Producing food isn't cheap, and the support we need to really pay attention to our food supply and ensure that there's proportion of land versus density in Simcoe North, and that's what I will certainly endorse.
you. Next person is Aaron.
Thanks, Madeline. Yeah, that's a really good question too. And it's also kind of multifaceted. I know Elizabeth said she's a farm girl. I'm a farm boy as well. I was adopted onto a farm. We had horses and goats and chickens that absolutely hated me, but it was a lot of fun and it was a lot of work. And I understand that, like, when we had 11 acres, right? And we bought that place years and years and years ago, and it's so much more difficult to do that now. So I'm thinking of like maybe incorporating some sort of small business model. I know that you said public, but we can do, we can provide grants for small businesses who are willing to open farms in local areas. We also need to work with municipalities, right? Who and people and these NGOs and movements like the Stop Sprawl who are willing to collectively do something on a piece of land that everyone can benefit from. And the public, has a real vested interest in that. And that's something that we can fund, right? So we can fund these community farms all across the province to deal with food insecurity issues and to protect land and to continue to teach, the generations that come after us how to farm and how to live sustainably and how to do these things. That's well within, an education budget to do that, to help people learn that stuff. So anything that comes up that's significant in addressing that, I'm for it.
Thank you, Aaron, and I'll pass it off to Krystal.
Farming is educational. Agriculture is educational. It's absolutely educational. I love where your head's at, Aaron, on that one, Aaron. Community farms. I want to see more of those. We have a community farm in Rama, and it's absolutely beautiful what they've done in Rama, and I think that needs to happen everywhere. Right now, there is actually farmland that is under threat. It's the Lakehead Farm and Jacob Curie Moreland. He has a petition going around right now, and it would be amazing if people could sign it to help protect this farmland, as well protection for farmlands and conserving land. I just learned about this nonprofit organization that it actually it helps. Its entire goal is to protect lands. Now they're a nonprofit, but that's where we get into funding, the topic of funding. And I think that incorporating funding to preserve these lands is so important, and really investing in our agriculture and education around that. So that's really important, and I'd like to see more of that. Somebody should thank you, Jacob. You shared the petition in the chat. It's awesome.
Thank you, Krystal. And I forgot to ask for the last question, but does anyone want to use their add-on? This is the last question, I think. Liz and Krystal still have one more if you want to. One? Okay. I will pass it back off to Margaret to lead the closing remarks. Thank you.
1 second. There we go. I'm back. Thank you, candidates. We have gotten through a lot of questions, and I think we've covered a variety of topics, and really happy that we had the breadth. Even though we couldn't go into all of these as deeply as we want to, we had the breadth of the conversation, which I think should be the focus of all the conversations we're having about the election. It seems to be a lot of red flags about, tax cuts and this and that. And really, we got to be thinking about people, right? People and planet, and those things. You can't fix those just with a simple policy, right? It's a much more profound conversation. So I'm going to move on to the closing statements by the candidates. They have 2 minutes apiece. And I've put in the chat, for those that didn't see, the email addresses for all the candidates that are here tonight. If one of your candidates, someone you were thinking about voting for isn't here, know that it was the Conservatives, the Ontario Party, the NDP, the Greens, and the Liberals that were invited all at the same time. So there was no preferential treatment. So if your candidate isn't here tonight, then I would suggest you reach out to them and ask why they weren't here tonight, because I think if you can see what we've covered tonight, there's some really important questions and conversations happening that everyone should be a part of. So 2 minutes for closing remarks. And for this, The order we have, Elizabeth will be going first, followed by Krystal, and then followed by Aaron. And as I said, there's 2 minutes for this component. And Elizabeth, your 2 minutes starts when you'd like.
Thank you. What a pleasure having these conversations. Excellent forum. Thank you for putting this together. The questions covered an entire gamut of how we need to promote and a healthy society with environment, with education, with food security, with housing security. It's all intertwined, and I am so committed to being able to see this through, that we won't have an easy fix. It's not going to be just one thing. But what I do believe in is the collectivism of people, and that when government forms, you go to the people who would experience it every day. I don't know everything, okay? I'll never claim to know everything. I think life is lifelong learning. And it's the people who experience it. And what I want to do is come back to my community and have these profound conversations. If you look at some of the services and programs that have been developed in Simcoe North by people who cared and people who wanted to make a difference, those need to go to become policy provincially, that everyone benefits from that. So happy for my platform. I like it. Please look us up online. We fully costed it yesterday, so there is a budget attached to it, and I look forward to raising my daughters who want to stay in Simcoe North, and other kids who are raised here want to stay here, and that we build a sustainable future for them as well and involve them in that. I'm a forever optimist, and I'm hopeful. With strong, ready, working for you, transparency, accessibility. That's who I will be when I'm voted.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I thought you were going to make the cutoff there, but just if you were just so close, so close. That's okay. I know Bree hates doing it. I imagine she feels very guilty about cutting off all of your wonderful thoughts, but we're trying to keep it fair. All right, Krystal, you are next, and you have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Hey, yeah, no, I think that Simcoe North is pretty blessed in this election. You know, you have one candidate, I'm just going by my screen, you know, you have one candidate, Aaron, who has experienced homelessness, and he is a survivor of the child welfare system. And then you have Elizabeth, who is a breast cancer survivor and a strong mental health advocate. And then I have a lot of lived experience, but, you know, like I've survived the child welfare system and, you know, human trafficking and homelessness and, you know, mental health and addictions. There's so much, there's such a variety here. And I think that is exactly what Elizabeth said, you know, lived experience. You know, you have to go to the sources of these issues. You have to talk to these people. You have to listen to their voices. You have 3 very strong voices in this fight right now. So, and I'm really happy, and I know I can say this on behalf of all of the candidates. You know, we're really, really proud to be standing to represent you. And, you know, we are ready, we are willing to represent you, and, you know, your voices are what matter. And we're here to listen to your voices and amplify your voices, and, you know, help you live in a better Simcoe North, because that's what we want. You know, we're part of this community, and we have struggled with a lot of the same issues that you're struggling with. So yeah, just this conversation was so needed, and it was so important, and I feel like we just scratched the surface. I know there's so much more to be said. So yeah, just get out there and talk about climate and your community. Thank you. And
Thanks,
vote, go vote.
Yes, of course, go vote. Don't worry, I'll do one more push for that right at the end. That's part of my closing, so I'll cover that. Okay, Aaron, last but not least, you have 2 minutes for your closing remarks.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you for all of your questions. Paige, Madeline, Bree. Bree, I actually used to host a few debates like this on behalf of students, and that was my favorite part, was cutting people off the time. So yeah, you definitely want to be able to hear their ideas, but keeping it fair is definitely in the effort of democracy. So when I first got the invite to this, I was really excited. You know, Lake Simcoe came up and I'm like, awesome. Like, I grew up on the shores of Lake Simcoe. I had a pretty rough childhood, and I had to escape that when I was really, really young. Spent a lot of time as a homeless youth. I stayed at some friends' houses, you know, parks, basketball courts, my high school, wherever I could. But one thing that really made all of that easier was being so close to that water, right? And how humans have such an intimate relationship with water. And you know, I have dreams about Lake Simcoe still all the time, and now I'm falling in love with Lake Couchiching and Georgian Bay, right? So environmental issues are going to remain on the very top of my priority list, win or lose this election. Obviously, I'd like to make change at Queen's Park, but it's becoming a big part of my identity, and it's something that I'm really, really proud of. So thanks so much for all of your questions. I know that, you know, there are some social issues that people are worried about too: affordability, housing, you know, their small businesses, a post COVID-19 pandemic economic recovery plan that really benefits all of us, and not just these rich corporations. So I'm definitely going to continue focusing on that. I'm going to continue listening to the residents here. I'm going to, you know, keep my nose in the books and in the newspapers to make sure that I understand the complex issues that are affecting all of us, and then work with the community to find solutions to all of that. I think that's the most important thing that we can take from from any of these events, is that we're learning, we're listening, we're adapting.
Sorry, Aaron.
It really isn't enjoyable, though. I don't like it.
That's okay. I didn't hear your warning.
Sorry.
That's okay. I will never ask you this again, Bree. I don't want you to be the executioner anymore. So we're at the end, folks, and I want to pick up on something that Krystal said, because I think it's really true. I work regionally, all different types of ridings and communities, and I think the thing that I love about Simcoe North, even though I don't live in the riding myself, is when I come to events like today and I see the quality and the heart of the candidates, and then looking at the team that's behind, like Bree and Paige and Madeline and Jacob and all these other young people that are really pushing for change. I'm not including myself in that, but Simcoe North has a really bright future, and it's not a bad thing to have too many good people, right? Pushing for the same thing. That's not a bad thing. It's a really good thing. So I want to thank the audience for coming. I want to thank you for taking some time with us. The candidates, man, this is, people don't realize how difficult it is to run, how much of a sacrifice it is for your own family's time, for your own time, finances, the whole bit. It's a lot. And so win or lose, we appreciate all of the time and work you're putting in, and to all of the people that are supporting you, whether it be on your team or your family, whatever. So thanks to all of them. We hope today that this discussion helped voters across the riding inform their choices. We know that there was a lot of agreement, but again, I don't see that as a bad thing. It really is when you have a lot of candidates agreeing that we need to move in a better direction, that's not necessarily a bad thing. That means we have more opportunity for change, right? And listening to you guys, I would have a hard time too. So, I hope it's helped you inform your choices a little bit. And I know that talking about these social issues, whether it be social justice or environment, or talking about the increase of climate chaos, it's distressing and frightening. It's not an easy topic. These aren't easy conversations that we had today. There was a lot of emotion, a lot of somberness, because everyone here, and especially when the Just Recovery team, realize that there's real people at the end of these policies decisions. It's not just something that's kept in a book that doesn't impact anybody. But we have the power to participate in democracy and insist the choices that we make in the future support a livable planet and healthy communities, and ones that actually take care of people. So I encourage each of you to vote and encourage others to vote as well. And that's an important thing. You know, getting one vote in your own is important. Make it a carpool party. Bring a neighborhood with you. You don't have to tell them how to vote, but just get more people to vote. Look to the young people in your network who maybe haven't engaged in politics before, that need a little bit of mentoring. That would be great as well. Advanced polls open on May 19th. You can go to Elections Ontario website and they will tell you where the advanced polls are, where your return office is. So if you're trying to avoid the crowds, you don't have to wait until June 2nd if you already know who you'd like to vote for. Of course, voting day is June 2nd. And I also want to stress, beyond voting, continue to connect with whoever your future MPP is and hold them accountable to the promises that they have made throughout this campaign. If they've made it any tonight or today on the debate or in other public forums, because really we get the democracy that we deserve and we fight for. So they can't be accountable to you if they never hear from you. And I can tell you they're not hearing enough from people and hearing a lot more from other groups that may not have people's interests in mind. So this is just your entry ticket to democracy voting. It's not your end goal, right? It's just the start. Finally, the video recording, some of you had asked, it will be recorded and hosted on Just Recovery's YouTube channel. For those of you that registered, you will be receiving a link via email through Zoom once the video is ready. And then we'll be sharing that on social media as well. If you didn't get your questions asked, I've put the emails into the chat. Feel free to follow up with them. Reach out to candidates that weren't here that you want to hear from. I mean, this is really an important election, as they all are. And then to close, I'll share my favorite quote. If you've received an email from me, you already know what it is, so it's a big spoiler. Never doubt that a small, committed group of citizens can change the world. Indeed, is the only thing that ever has. And I really believe that to heart. And it's not just because her name is Margaret, like mine. So thank you to candidates. Thank you to my team, Bree, Paige, Madeline. Thank you to everybody that came. And you know, we'll be in chat, and best of luck to all the candidates, and go vote no later than June 2nd.